The beauty of sports is the way that it can make you feel and the way that it can bring people together. And when football starts again, specifically in the National Football League, those two things come together in a really special way. And it's part of the intoxication that I feel around the National Football League. The community of people supporting either one team altogether or multiple teams in one location, whatever it might be, is what I think is so beautiful about the NFL. Like the allegiances to certain players or certain teams, and the way people will wear their gear, and it's on their license plate cover, or it's on a bumper sticker, or it's their phone case, or whatever it might be. And there's lines from Abercrombie that are going crazy for the National Football League. The way that football, and specifically the NFL, with the allegiances to these teams, brings people together is one of my favorite things. Because even in Major League Baseball, yeah, there's really deep allegiances and fans and fan bases of teams, but there's also more individual players that people like more than anything else. It's rampant in the NBA. People like players more than they like teams. Well, in the NFL, there's this deep love and allegiance for teams. You see fan bases like the Seattle Seahawks, who have the famous 12th man. They built their stadium with their fans in mind so that they can have an impact on the game. The Buffalo Bills, Bills Mafia, the absolute lunatics that those people are. The demanding perfection of the people in Philadelphia and the aggressive pursuit of a championship that is not only the way the fans feel, but is also the way the organization is run. And then you go to a grocery store on a Friday or a Saturday morning, and people are clad in their NFL team's gear, whether it's Buffalo or the Raiders or the Bengals or the Minnesota Vikings, doesn't matter. It's so awesome, the community that is the NFL, and how people tune in because of the storylines, because of the players, because of what it means to certain cities, because of the crazy fan bases. It's just the most beautiful and wonderful time of the year. And I'm so glad we're back. And I'm especially glad that I get to do this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast celebrating a victory. One of the best feelings in sports is when your team starts the NFL season 1-0. It's been a while since I've been able to do that, and I'll tell you what, it feels really good. Let's get started. Hi, hello, and welcome into episode number 150, Big 150 of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. My name is Austin Elmore. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll share this podcast with somebody and tell them about it. We're going to try to make this thing grow during the course of football season. So what's on the agenda for today? Well, I'll recap Bengals Browns in week number 1. Brief recap of week 1 of the National Football League as a whole. Later on this week, we'll get into a bit of a preview of the Bengals and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's my thing about the Bengals. You can't move the goalposts on them now. Yes, it was an ugly win. Yes, they only won by 1 point. Yes, Burrow didn't look great, and the defense at times got lucky. And sure, Cleveland dropped passes and allowed interceptions and missed field goals. But the definition of a fast start to me is going 1-0. That's all that matters at the end of the day. And so all offseason, we've talked endlessly about starting fast, starting fast, starting fast, starting fast. Well, listen here, pal. Starting fast equals winning. Doesn't matter how you do it. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Starting fast equals winning. And if there's one thing we can look back on, it's week 1 a year ago. When you think of the 2024 Bengals, do you think of the team that lost to New England and looked completely inept offensively and missed, I think, 16 tackles on defense? No. You think of Joe and Jamar having the 2 best seasons in the history of the NFL and these fun, exciting, close games the Bengals were this close to making the playoffs in. The point I'm trying to make is that the Bengals we saw in week 1 a year ago were not the Bengals we saw the rest of the season. I wish we would have seen the defense that we saw in week 1 all year, but we didn't. I'm glad we didn't see the offense that we saw in week 1 last year all year because it kept them in games. The point I'm trying to make is you can't move the goalposts on the Bengals just because it was an ugly win. You can't say, oh, well, it doesn't count if you start fast if your offense sucks and your defense got lucky. No. It counts. The W under the column that says W has a 1 and the L says 0. 1-0. That's all that matters. And so that's why I'm not worried about this team. I'm not worried about, how they looked. Here's the other thing. I kind of told you in the preview episode of the Cleveland Browns. The Browns always muck it up. The Bengals never play well there. It's never easy. I'm just not, I didn't expect it to be where the Bengals come out and win the game by 20 points. I think I said I could see them winning from 7 to 10 points, but it just wasn't that easy. It was a struggle. Rewind really quickly for me to October of last year. The Bengals are in Cleveland for a game, and Cincinnati wins the game 21-14. The offense looked a lot like it did on Sunday, this past Sunday. The defense looked a lot like it did this past Sunday, and the Bengals won that game by 7 points. You know what the difference was? A kick return touchdown by Charlie Jones. Special teams was the difference. Just like it was this past Sunday with Cleveland not being able to kick, special teams was the difference for the Bengals. The stat lines in that game from last October and this game from this past weekend are very similar. I'm telling you, the Bengals are a bad matchup, or the Browns are a bad matchup for the Bengals. For whatever reason, it just is a struggle against them. That happens over the course of history in the NFL. You've seen that happen. And unfortunately, the Bengals just aren't that great in Cleveland and against Cleveland based on the way they're built. That being said, the Bengals now have won 4 straight games against the Cleveland Browns. They've won 5 of the last 6 games against the Cleveland Browns and have done and found a way to get the job done. That's ultimately all that matters. Now, listen, when it's not in January, normally at Paycor Stadium in a game that means nothing for Cleveland, it's obviously a different story when they're playing early in the season, like the home opener or the season opener or whatever it might be, or in October than it is at the end of the season. Clearly, they're different situations, but the Bengals have found ways to beat the Browns, and that's what matters. Winning football games is what matters. So let's talk about how did we get there. Bengals 17, Cleveland 16. I was so excited about the Bengals opening drive, because it was everything I talked about in the last podcast episode. The story of the 2025 Bengals needs to be that they can run the football. Well, they ran the football effectively on a 12-play, 68, 78-yard drive, whatever it was, to start the season. They ran the ball 7 times, 29 yards on 7 carries and a 5-yard touchdown run from Chase Brown. Bengals go up 7-0. He also caught a pass on the drive. So in 12 plays, 8 of them, the ball was in the hands of Chase Brown. I was fired up. I was like, yes, punch him in the mouth. I was looking for that Urban Meyer meme where he's like punching in the air. That's what I was looking for. Punch him in the mouth. Be a team that can run the football. The Bengals struggled after that for the most part. They did get the ball down into Cleveland territory. They did score another touchdown when Joe Burrow connected with Noah Fant. But after that opening drive, and if you know me, you know my rule, game doesn't start until after the script. After that opening drive, the Bengals struggled, especially running the ball. The consistency, the dependability of the offense on the ground just wasn't there. After that opening drive, where Chase Brown had 7 carries for 29 yards, he carried the ball 14 more times for just 14 yards. Burrow was sacked a handful of times, including 3 times in one drive. In the last play of that drive, he was in his own end zone, and he dove out of the end zone to prevent the safety, which ultimately could have been the difference in the game. That was a huge play that nobody talked about. And listen, Burrow wasn't sharp. He typically isn't sharp early on in the season. I don't know the reason for this, especially coming into this season where he was fully healthy, had the preseason snaps, a drama-free camp, all the stuff you're looking for Joe Burrow to do, and he didn't do it. I got some numbers here from Joe over the last few openers. Are you ready for this? Last year against New England, he was 21 of 29 for 164 yards, no touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times. I've often said that was one of the worst games I've ever seen Joe play. It just wasn't good. What about 2 years ago against Cleveland? Struggling with that calf injury. Joe was 14 of 31 for 82 yards and was sacked twice. This past Sunday, he was 14 of 23 for 113 yards, 1 touchdown, and was sacked 3 times. So if you average that out over the course of the last 3 openers, Joe is averaging a completion percentage of 59%, which is well below his average, and just 119 yards per game, which is well below his career average, 1 touchdown and almost 3 sacks a game. That's not good enough. For whatever reason, Joe struggles early. He's got to get it turned around. One of the other big issues was the operation in and of itself. Joe and Zach did not seem to be on the same page. Zach getting some play calls in late. The Bengals had to burn 3 timeouts at the line of scrimmage because the play call came in too late. They couldn't get the offense set. They couldn't do the motion, whatever it is. I blame that on Zach. He's got to be faster getting the play calls in. And I put some of that on Joe as well. I don't know the intricacies. I don't know the details. I don't know exactly how that works. But to me, that falls on Zach. You have got to be better at that. Here's the other thing, too, is week 1 in the NFL is just weird. It's always weird. There is always something that surprises you. If you go back to last year, the Arizona Cardinals nearly knocked off the Buffalo Bills. The way the Patriots beat the Bengals. Like, those games happen during the season. You saw how well Dallas played against Philly on Thursday night. You saw the Baltimore and Buffalo game, which was bonkers. You saw how well Tennessee and Cam Ward played in Denver. The craziness that was the Tampa and Atlanta game. Weird stuff happens in week 1, but rarely do you, when you think about a team, do you think back to, their week 1 result. Here's a perfect example. 2001, Paul Brown Stadium, season opener, Bengals hosting Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots. The Bengals beat them. The 2001 Bengals were awful. They beat the Patriots that day. You know what happened to the Patriots that year? They won the Super Bowl. It doesn't define you. Your result in week 1 doesn't define you. And I am a little bothered by the fact that so many Bengals fans seem upset or angry about the fact that the Bengals won and the style in which they won. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about, okay, they won. How do we fix it moving forward? So, how do we fix it moving forward? Well, the big news, I think, from an injury standpoint, by the way, Bengals came out clean for the most part. Lucas Patrick did get injured, and he has been placed on the injured reserve list, so it's going to be at least 4 weeks until we see Lucas Patrick. So Dalton Reisner, the guard that they signed, comes into action right away. Thought he played okay. I'm still going through the film and trying to figure out my full opinion on the way they played. Overall, I thought the offensive line got bullied, especially in the run game. Wasn't a great game for Orlando Brown. Wasn't a good game in his NFL debut for Dylan Fairchild. Ted Karras struggled at times. Patrick and Reisner were okay. Amarius Mims, okay. Overall, not great. But the Bengals come away relatively healthy. They've got to get better on offense. There was a couple times, and I should say they got to get better on the ground. There was at least one pass play where Burrow had Chase wide open for a touchdown, and he missed him. He instead threw it into a slant on Mike Gesicki, and I don't know if that's just because Cleveland had been speeding him up in the pocket, and he just back step of his drop and let it rip. If he throws it to Jamar basically walks in for a touchdown. That stuff almost never happens with Joe Burrow, but he did miss that one. So that sort of stuff, you see it in film, you get a game under your belt, you have a different opponent that you have a lot more confidence against, like Jacksonville coming up, and you're like, okay, now we can go. But they have to get better and more consistent in their ability to run block and keep Chase Brown involved. And I was having this conversation with Tony Pike on the air. He theorized that when the Bengals run the ball that much, like they did it almost exclusively on the first drive of the game, and then you went 30 minutes between snaps. So the offensive snap that Chase Brown scored the touchdown on and the next offensive snap were 30 minutes in real time. Because Cleveland rattled off like a 10-minute drive. You had multiple TV timeouts, a quarter break, other timeouts, penalties, reviews, etc. So you had 30 minutes in real time between offensive snaps. And Tony was theorizing that caused Joe to lose his rhythm, Zach to lose his rhythm as a play caller, and ultimately the Bengals to lose their rhythm. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But I would think there's got to be something in there where you can establish a rhythm relatively quickly. I didn't think this was the best play call game from Zach Taylor. And if you know me, I'm a Zach Taylor defender. I'm a Zach Taylor apologist. So I think he could have been a lot better. But after reviewing the film and looking at it, sometimes you realize, he made the right play. He made the right call. Quarterback didn't execute. Offensive lineman didn't block. penalty didn't get called and so on. And, here's another thing, too. Penalties not being called. Listen, Joe Burrow, I understand. He's not the flashiest guy in the world. He's not Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, at least when it comes to media coverage. But when somebody grabs his face mask and turns his head to the side and nearly takes his nose off of his face, a big, bright orange helmet with stripes on it, and you don't call that for this guy at this point in his career, that shit has got to change. There are too many times when that stuff happens to Joe Burrow and it's not called. Most famously in that 2-point conversion in Baltimore where he got slammed on the head, just like they called on Trey Hendrickson against Joe Flacco on Sunday. No call in the Baltimore game. For whatever reason, Joe doesn't get those calls. I don't understand it, and it has to change. The inconsistencies of NFL officiating, I don't understand. But overall, you find a way to win. The Browns are just not a good matchup. That's firmly what I believe. Find a way to win and get out of there. All right, let's quickly take a look at the rest of the National Football League in week number 1. The Eagles beat the Cowboys on the Thursday night kickoff game, 24-20. Jalen Carter spit on Dak Prescott. He was fined $57,000 and a suspension for 1 game. The league considered that game that he missed the entire game a full game suspension, so he served it. He will be good to go in week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs. I was very impressed with Dallas. I was impressed with Dak Prescott. They looked better than I thought they would. Chargers were dominant, it felt like, over the Chiefs, 27-21 in Sao Paulo. Very impressive game from Justin Herbert. The Chargers didn't run the ball as much as I expected them to run it. Herbert won the game for them. He was fantastic. On top of that, Joe Alt, their left tackle, who was supposed to be their right tackle but moved over to left after injuries, completely erased any pass rusher that lined up against him from Kansas City. Spectacular performance from Joe Alt, who they call Joe Alt Delete. So awesome. Buccaneers over the Falcons 23-20. Missed field goals in this game as well. The extra point by Chase McLaughlin does not go in, giving the Falcons a chance to tie. Younghoe Koo misses his kick. Tampa Bay wins. Big game from Emeka Egbuka in that game. Awesome to watch. Wins the game on a post-route touchdown. He's going to be the Rookie of the Year in the NFL, I can promise you that. Surprise of the day was the Colts and the way that they dominated the Miami Dolphins. 33-8 the final in Indianapolis, the first game after the passing of their owner, Jim Irsay. Daniel Jones went nuclear. They're calling him Indiana Jones now. 22 of 29, 272 yards and a touchdown. Michael Pittman Jr. had 6 catches for 80 and a tug as well. By the way, what's interesting about this is Jim Irsay's daughters have taken over control of the Colts. And one of his daughters was on the sideline with a microphone pack, or with a headset pack, basically, or battery, you know what I'm saying, with an earpiece in, listening to the coach's communications on the sidelines and taking notes, basically saying, hey, I need to know how this operation works, and I need to know who to blame, and I want to know how the communication is happening and what the game day operation looks like, and blah, 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 blah. I thought that was pretty cool. She looked like a badass. That's awesome. Raiders beat the Patriots. This was another bit of a surprise, 20-13 in the debut of Pete Carroll as the Raiders head coach. Geno Smith, they wrote him off. He didn't write back. 24-34, 362 and a tug. Ashton Genty, not a good day on the ground. 19 carries, 38 yards. He did score a touchdown. Cardinals edged out the Saints 20-13 at the Superdome. Saints deserve to lose wearing those ugly-ass gold uniforms. They should never wear those again. I've said I'm a Spencer Rattler believer. I should probably walk back that take. Steelers over the Jets 34-32, the homecoming for Aaron Rodgers and sort of for Justin Fields. Both those quarterbacks switched teams in the offseason. Rodgers looked like his old self. 22 of 30, 244 yards, 4 touchdowns. He looked awesome against the Jets. Afterwards, he was asked if it, felt good to beat the Jets. He said, I was happy to beat everybody associated with the Jets. Not a surprise from Aaron Rodgers. Commanders over the Giants 21-6. Jaden Daniels 19-30, 233 yards and 1 touchdown. Maybe the most boring game of the day. Actually, the most boring game of the day might have been Jags-Panthers. 26-10, the final. Jacksonville wins. T-Law, not great. 19-31, 178 yards, a touchdown. He also threw an interception in that game. Broncos over the Titans 20-12 in Denver. Tennessee played really well in this game, especially up front and especially first-round pick, number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward. He looked really good, looked solid, but Tennessee didn't have enough firepower at the end. Bo Nix, 25 of 40, 176 yards, 1 touchdown. Bo Nix looked terrible. Niners over the Seahawks 17-13 in Seattle, but it came at a cost. Brock Purdy has a left shoulder injury, a toe injury, and George Kittle has a hamstring injury that's going to keep him out at least the next 4 weeks. Yikes. Christian McCaffrey, though, 22 carries, 69 yards. His calf is good to go. Maybe the most dominant performance of the weekend, Packers over the Lions, 27-13 at Lambeau Field. Maybe Detroit is not going to be as good as we thought with the loss of those coordinators in the offseason. Rams over the Texans, 14-9 in LA. I think the Texans are going to be terrible. Matthew Stafford was great, 21-29, 245 and a touchdown. And then game of the week, and maybe already game of the year, was Bills 41, Ravens 40 on Sunday Night Football. Buffalo comes back from down 15 points in the fourth quarter. They outscored Baltimore 22-6. It was unbelievable. And win 41-40. That game could determine who has home field advantage in the AFC playoffs. Unbelievable game. Monday Night Football last night, a comeback from Minnesota as well. They outscored Chicago 21-7 in the fourth to win that game 27-24. I hate both those quarterbacks. Don't like J.J. McCarthy. Don't like Caleb Williams. Kind of rooting for both of them to fail, to be completely honest with you. But that is week number 1 in the NFL. Week 2 gets started Thursday night when it's the Commanders and the Packers on Prime Video. My plan moving forward is to record the next episode, the preview episode, on during the halftime, basically, of Thursday Night Football coming up this year, so that it'll be good to go by Friday moving forward. So just so you know what to look for, that's my plan. What else do we have here? I put up on Twitter and on Instagram, Ask Auty. Ask me questions. I used to do this a lot. I didn't get as many responses as I had hoped to get, but that's all right. I did it a little bit too late. But I asked you on Instagram or on Twitter, ask me some questions that you want answered on the podcast. Let's run through a couple of those real quick. First one, actually on Instagram, I asked for questions, comments, or concerns. First one, Jamar Chase got me 4 points in fantasy. Yeah, that sucks. Sorry. It'll be better this week. This one, Chicago Bears fan here. Let's get your thoughts on Caleb Williams. All right, you ready for this? Spell this word with me. A-S-S. Ass. Caleb's a bad quarterback. I think he's a bad guy. I think he's a bad teammate. I don't believe in him. I don't think you should believe in him. And I think Ben Johnson's got his hand full. Look at the tape from Caleb Williams on Monday Night Football. Inexcusable. He's a bad player. I feel bad for Bears fans. I really do. This one says, we know the offense can't solve Cleveland. In your opinion, what's the biggest culprit? Why? Well, first of all, you've got a generational defensive end in Myles Garrett who just wrecks game plans. And then you have 2 really good cornerbacks in Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome, where the Browns feel confident going up man-to-man against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and those guys have success. They have wins against Jamar and T in coverage. So when you've got sticky defenders and a game-wrecking defensive end, and oh, by the way, some really good pass rushers elsewhere on the defensive line, it speeds up your offense, it creates some clunkiness, and they dominated the point of attack in the run game as well. It's just hard to get anything going, and that's been the case over and over and over again, and the Bengals just seem to be stumped by it. I don't quite understand how they haven't been able to get better at this. Couple more. How long until Tyson Anderson is starting at safety? Tyson played a little bit on Sunday. I thought he was fine. I don't know that it's going to happen anytime soon unless there's an injury. The best Bengal on the field was Jordan Battle. Defensively, it was him and B.J. Hill were the 2 best Bengals on defense on Sunday. And, Tyson obviously plays Geno Stone's position. I think it's a possibility that he gets rotated in a little bit more, but I don't think he's going to start, at least not anytime soon. This one comes from Michael. Do the Bengals send the tape of Joe Burrow getting his face mask twisted around into the league, asking them to do better? Yes, they do. I promise you they do. I know they've done it in the past. I know they will continue to do it because it is absolutely inexcusable that those calls are not made. I guarantee you the Bengals have sent their gripes to the league office already this week. All right, be back hopefully on Friday morning or Saturday morning with a preview of the Bengals and the Jags. We'll get you up to date with the latest roster moves, the injury report, the weather forecast, the uniforms, all of it ahead of Bengals Jags Week 2 for the Bengals Open in Orange opener. I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll like it. I hope you'll subscribe to it. I hope you tell your friends about it. I hope you share it. This episode and every episode from here until the end of time. I hope you will. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, you can follow me on all social media platforms at Auty Elmore, AUTYELMORE. You can also hear me weekdays from noon to 3. I co-host a show called Cincy 360 with Tony Pike, and can also be heard on 700 WLW sometimes as well. Download the iHeartRadio app if you haven't already. We'll talk to you again later this week. As always, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.